This woman's name is Lauren. She's 26 years old and she just destroyed her entire life over a lottery ticket she never bought. You heard that right? Her boyfriend of 2 years won $200,000 and instead of celebrating with him, she demanded he hand over 75% of it. When he refused, she walked out. Now, 8 months later, she's unemployed, living in her childhood bedroom and watching him plan a wedding to someone else. But here's the thing that'll shock you the most. Lauren still believes she did nothing wrong. I'm Emma, your storyteller here at Mrs. Emma, and today we're diving deep into one of the most jaw-dropping tales of entitlement, self-destruction, and complete lack of self-awareness I've ever encountered. So buckle up, because this story is going to take you on a wild ride through delusion, betrayal, and consequences that hit harder than anyone could have imagined. Lauren thought she had everything figured out. She'd been dating Owen for 2 solid years. He worked as some kind of supervisor at a warehouse. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make you turn your head twice, but it was steady income. Meanwhile, Lauren was grinding it out in retail, which she absolutely hated, but she had a plan. She was saving money for nursing school. She had ambitions. She had dreams that extended beyond folding clothes and dealing with difficult customers 8 hours a day. When they first got together, Owen seemed like the perfect catch. He'd take her out on dates and pick up the check every single time. He'd surprise her with thoughtful little gifts that showed he was paying attention. He did all those romantic gestures that make you feel valued and cherished. But looking back now, Lauren believes he was only doing all of that because he knew she was completely out of his league. And honestly, she might have had a point there. Lauren was constantly getting attention from other men. At work, guys would hit on her while she was stocking shelves. On social media, her DMs were flooded with messages from admirers. Everywhere they went together, she could feel eyes following her. But despite all that attention, despite having her pick of available men, she chose Owen. Why? Because he seemed stable. Because he seemed like the type of man who would treat her with respect and consideration. Now here's where things get interesting. Lauren's mother had taught her something very important from a young age. She drilled into Lauren's head that women need to protect themselves financially because men can just walk away from relationships whenever it suits them. So Lauren kept her finances completely separate from Owen's. She had her own savings account that he couldn't touch. She had her own checking account that was hers alone. And she absolutely refused to merge their money together just because they were dating. To her, this was basic common sense. But here's the thing that Lauren emphasizes over and over again. Owen never complained about paying for most of their dates and trips together. He seemed genuinely happy to take care of those expenses. And Lauren interpreted that as his way of showing love. She figured that was just how he expressed his feelings for her. Besides, from Lauren's perspective, she was giving him something far more valuable than money could ever buy. She was giving him herself. And she wants everyone to understand just how many men would have given anything to be in Owen's position. He was dating a woman that other men could only fantasize about. He was getting the girlfriend experience that most guys never even come close to having. Lauren supported Owen in ways that go beyond anything money could purchase. When work stress had him tied up in knots, she was right there listening to him vent for hours on end. When his anxiety spiraled out of control and he couldn't calm himself down, she was his rock, talking him through it and making him feel safe again. When family drama erupted and he didn't know how to handle it, she was there offering advice and giving him perspective he couldn't find on his own. She became his therapist, his personal cheerleader, and his entire emotional support system all wrapped up in one person, and she did all of this without ever sending him a bill or keeping score. The whole lottery situation started because Owen and a few guys from his workplace had formed this weekly pool where they'd chip in money and buy tickets together. Honestly, Lauren thought the whole thing was pretty pointless. What are the actual chances of winning anything significant from the lottery? The odds are astronomical. But Owen enjoyed doing these little activities with his work buddies, and Lauren didn't really pay much attention to it. She had her own life, her own interests, her own circle of friends to maintain. But then something changed. Lauren started noticing that Owen was getting text messages that would make him smile in this strange, secretive way. When she'd ask him what was making him so happy, he'd brush it off and say it was nothing important, or that his friend Isaac was just being ridiculous about something. That should have been Lauren's first warning sign that Owen was keeping secrets from her. After 2 years of building a relationship together, why would he suddenly start hiding things? The truth exploded into the open in the most unexpected way possible. Owen had left his phone sitting on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower, and it kept buzzing with incoming messages. Lauren wasn't deliberately trying to invade his privacy, but when someone's phone is going off that frequently, you can't help but wonder what could be so urgent. So she picked it up and looked at the screen. There was a text message from Isaac that stopped her heart cold. It said, "Dude, I still can't believe you won $200,000. This is going to change absolutely everything for you." $200,000. And Owen hadn't breathed a single word about it to her. She was supposed to be the most important person in his entire life, and he was keeping news this massive completely hidden from her. That's when Lauren knew with absolute certainty that something was seriously broken in their relationship. When Owen stepped out of the shower, Lauren was sitting on the couch with his phone clutched in her hands. The expression that flashed across his face told her everything she needed to know. He'd been actively planning to keep this lottery win a secret from her. He started stumbling over his words, making weak excuses about how he'd just found out, and was still trying to process the information. But Lauren could clearly see that the text message from Isaac was from 2 days earlier. For 2 entire days, Owen had been lying directly to her face. Lauren tried to start the conversation on a positive note. She congratulated him and asked what his plans were for the money. But then Owen started talking about investing in his future and being responsible with his windfall. He mentioned possibly helping his parents pay down some of their bills. He talked about putting money aside for a house fund somewhere down the line. His parents. People who had barely even acknowledged Lauren's existence throughout their entire relationship were getting consideration before she was. That's when the reality of the situation crashed down on Lauren like a ton of bricks. Owen was planning to completely cut her out of the picture. After 2 years of building a life together, of planning a future together, he was going to act like she didn't even exist when it came to this money. He was going to make all these major decisions about their future without even bothering to consult her. Lauren's mind started racing through everything she'd contributed to their relationship. All those late nights she'd spent listening to him worry obsessively about money and his uncertain future. All the countless times she'd reassured him that everything would work out fine, that he was capable of achieving more than he gave himself credit for. All the emotional labor she'd invested in making him feel confident and secure in himself. And here's something Lauren believes deep in her soul. If she hadn't been in his life keeping him stable and happy, would he have even been in the right mental space to win this money in the first place? Happy people attract better luck. Happy people make better decisions. And Lauren was the one who'd been making Owen happy. So in a very real sense, that money was as much hers as it was his, even though her name wasn't technically printed on the winning ticket. Lauren decided she needed to be completely direct about what she needed from Owen. She couldn't just sit back passively and watch him make decisions about their shared future without including her in the conversation. So she laid it out for him plainly. If they were genuinely partners, if they were truly building something meaningful together, then major financial windfalls like this lottery win should benefit both of them equally. She wants everyone to understand that she wasn't demanding half of the money. She was asking for what seemed fair when you considered everything she'd invested emotionally and mentally in their relationship. 75% made perfect sense to her. Owen would still walk away with $50,000, which is more money than most people see in multiple years of working. And Lauren would have enough to finally quit her soul-crushing retail job and focus on nursing school full-time without worrying about making rent or buying groceries. But Owen reacted like Lauren had just asked him to donate one of his kidneys. His face went into this shocked, almost horrified expression, and he started saying things like, "That's a huge amount of money, and I really need to think about this carefully." Think about what, exactly? Whether his girlfriend of 2 years was worth investing in? Whether their future together actually mattered to him? Lauren could see crystal clear that Owen was being completely and utterly selfish about this entire situation. He was thinking exclusively about himself and his own wants and desires, not about them functioning as a team. He wasn't considering how this money could solve problems for both of them simultaneously, how it could make both of their lives dramatically better. He was laser-focused on keeping every penny for himself. Lauren tried explaining her position to him again, this time with more detail. She reminded him about all the times she'd been his shoulder to lean on when he was struggling with work stress or family problems. All the other men she'd turned down flat because she was committed to building something real with him. all the sacrifices she'd made to be the best possible girlfriend she could be for him. But Owen just kept repeating the same thing over and over like a broken record. It was his money and therefore his decision to make. That's when Lauren realized with startling clarity that she was dealing with a completely different person than the Owen she thought she knew. The Owen she'd been dating for 2 years would have understood exactly what she was trying to communicate. He would have seen this lottery win as an incredible opportunity to secure their future together and make both of their dreams possible. But this new Owen, this version of Owen who suddenly had money, was already showing her that he thought he was somehow better than her now. So Lauren gave him an ultimatum. She said, "Owen, I need you to really think hard about what you're doing here. If you can't see my value after everything we've been through together, then maybe we need to seriously reconsider our entire relationship." Lauren emphasizes that she wasn't trying to manipulate him with threats or mind games. She was just being brutally honest about what his decision meant for their future. If Owen couldn't invest in building a life together with her, then what exactly were they doing? Were they just playing house until something better came along for him? She gave him 24 hours to think about it and make his final decision. That seemed more than fair to her. It was enough time for him to get past the initial shock and really consider what she was saying, because she genuinely believed that once Owen calmed down and thought about it logically, he'd realize she was absolutely right. He'd understand that sharing his good fortune with the woman he supposedly loved was the smart, mature thing to do. But Lauren also knew that if Owen chose money over their relationship, then she'd discovered his true colors before it was too late. Because if he couldn't see her worth now after 2 years together, he never would. And Lauren wasn't going to waste one more precious second of her life on someone who didn't value what she brought to the relationship. Lauren spent that entire night lying awake thinking about all the ways this money could transform their lives. They could get a really nice apartment together, maybe even buy a house if they were smart about it. She could finally pursue her nursing degree without the constant anxiety about money. They could travel to places they'd only dreamed about before. They could have nice dinners at restaurants they'd never been able to afford. They wouldn't have to stress about bills or unexpected expenses anymore. It would solve so many problems for both of them simultaneously. More importantly, it would prove to Lauren that Owen was serious about their relationship. It would show her that he wasn't just keeping her around for convenience until someone better came along. Because that's what a lot of men do, if we're being honest. They keep women around for all the benefits that come with a relationship. The emotional support, the companionship, the physical intimacy, all of it. But they never really commit to building something real and lasting together. This lottery win was functioning like a test, Lauren realized. It was revealing whether Owen was the kind of man worth investing her future in, or just another guy who'd take everything he could get from her and then move on when it suited his purposes. And Lauren was desperately hoping he'd pass this test. When Owen's 24-hour deadline expired, Lauren could tell just by looking at his face that he'd made his final decision. He looked serious and determined, like he'd been rehearsing some kind of prepared speech. They sat down together in his living room, and Lauren was genuinely hoping this would be the moment their relationship elevated to the next level of commitment. But then Owen said the words that showed Lauren exactly who he really was underneath everything. "Lauren, I've been thinking carefully about what you said, and I think it's best if I keep the money and invest it in my own future." Lauren couldn't believe what she was hearing. After everything they'd been through together, after all the support she'd given him unconditionally, he was choosing money over her. He was literally telling her that 75% of some lottery winnings was more important to him than their 2-year relationship. Lauren tried to stay calm and explain her position to him one final time. She reminded him about all the times she'd been there for him without hesitation, all the emotional support she'd provided when he was at his lowest points, all the ways she'd helped him become the person he was today, confident and capable instead of anxious and unsure. But Owen just kept repeating the same statement. It was his money, and he had the right to do whatever he wanted with it. Then he had the absolute nerve to say that their relationship shouldn't be about money. Can you even believe that? After Lauren had just spent 20 minutes carefully explaining that this wasn't about money at all, it was about partnership and commitment and building a future together, Owen tried to make her sound like some kind of gold digger. That's when Lauren knew without any doubt that Owen had been influenced by outside forces. She asked him directly if he'd been talking to his friend Isaac about this situation, and the guilty expression that flashed across his face told her everything she needed to know. He'd been taking relationship advice from his perpetually single friend who'd never maintained a serious relationship in his entire life. Lauren was absolutely furious, and not just about the money itself. She was angry about the fact that Owen was letting other people make decisions about their relationship. If he'd just talked to her like an adult instead of running to his friends for advice, they could have worked this out together. But instead, he was treating her like the enemy, like someone he needed protection from. Lauren told him exactly what she thought about him taking advice from Isaac. She said, "So you're letting someone who's never been able to keep a girlfriend for more than 6 months tell you how to handle a 2-year relationship? That's who you want to listen to about commitment and partnership?" Owen got defensive and said Isaac was just helping him think through his options. His options. Like Lauren was some kind of business decision he needed to carefully analyze. Like she hadn't been the most important person in his life for 2 solid years. Lauren gave Owen one last chance to do the right thing. She said, "Owen, if you can't see my value after everything we've been through together, then we need to take a break. I'm not going to beg you to treat me like I matter." And you know what Owen did? He just sat there in silence. He didn't fight for their relationship. Didn't try to find a compromise that would work for both of them. Didn't show any signs that losing her would be a problem for him at all. He just watched her pack up her belongings like she was some random person leaving his apartment. As Lauren was walking out the door, she turned around and said, "I hope that money keeps you warm at night, Owen, because you just lost the best thing that ever happened to you." She meant every single word of that statement. Owen had absolutely no idea what he was giving up. He was so hyper-focused on that money that he couldn't see the incredible woman who was walking out of his life forever. He was going to regret this decision for the rest of his life. Lauren was certain of it. Lauren went to stay with her sister Jenna while she figured out her next move. She was hurt, obviously. The pain was deep and real. But she was also proud of herself for standing up for what she deserved. She wasn't going to let Owen treat her like she didn't matter, no matter how much money he suddenly had. And honestly, Lauren was confident that Owen would come crawling back once he realized what he'd lost. Because men like Owen don't just find women like Lauren every day. He'd gotten comfortable taking her for granted, assuming she'd always be there. But now he was going to learn what life was like without her constant support and presence. Lauren figured it would take maybe a week before he started missing her desperately. 2 weeks maximum before he came begging for forgiveness and a second chance. Because that's what always happens when men realize they've completely screwed up something good, right? But days went by and nothing happened. No phone calls, no text messages, no sign whatsoever that Owen was even thinking about her. Lauren started to wonder if maybe she needed to make the first move. Not to apologize because she hadn't done anything wrong, but to give Owen an opening to fix things between them. So she sent him a simple text message. "I hope you're doing okay. I've been thinking about us." But Owen didn't respond. He didn't even read the message according to the read receipts. That's when Lauren started to get really angry. She tried calling him a few times, but every call went straight to voicemail. Either his phone was dead or he was deliberately ignoring her. Both options made her absolutely furious. After 2 years together, he couldn't even be bothered to have a basic conversation with her. Lauren decided to go to Owen's workplace to talk to him face-to-face like adults. But when she arrived at the warehouse, Owen's supervisor told her that Owen had specifically asked them not to allow her into the building. He'd actually told his boss that he didn't want to see her under any circumstances. Lauren was so embarrassed she wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. Owen had humiliated her in front of his co-workers, people who knew they'd been together for 2 years. He'd made her look like some crazy ex-girlfriend who couldn't take a hint and move on with her life. That's when Lauren realized Owen was playing psychological games with her, trying to make her look desperate and unstable. Well, she wasn't going to fall for it. If Owen wanted to play games, Lauren could play games too. She posted a carefully worded status on Facebook about people showing their true colors when money gets involved. She didn't mention Owen by name, but people who knew them would understand exactly what she was talking about. But instead of getting the support and validation she expected, people started asking uncomfortable questions in the comments. They wanted to know exactly what had happened, how much money Owen had actually won, what specifically Lauren had asked for. And when she explained the situation honestly, people didn't react the way she thought they would. Even her own sister Jenna took Owen's side in the dispute. She said maybe Lauren should have just been happy for Owen instead of immediately thinking about what she could get from his win. She said 75% seemed like an excessive amount to ask for, especially since they weren't married or even living together officially. Lauren couldn't believe her own sister was questioning her judgment and her actions. She tried to explain that it wasn't about the money itself. It was about partnership and building a future together. But Jenna just kept saying that Owen had a right to his own money, and maybe Lauren was being unreasonable with her demands. Lauren's mom said the exact same thing when Jenna told her what was happening. She suggested that maybe Lauren had come on too strong, that men don't like to feel controlled or pressured. But Lauren hadn't tried to control Owen at all. She'd just asked him to be a real partner instead of acting like a single man with no commitments. Nobody seemed to understand that this situation was so much bigger than money. This was about whether Owen saw Lauren as someone worth investing in for the long term, or just someone he was casually dating with no real future. And by keeping all the money for himself, he'd shown her exactly what she meant to him, which was apparently not very much. Lauren started hearing through mutual friends that Owen was telling people his own version of the story, painting her in the worst possible light. He was making her sound like she'd aggressively demanded money from him and threatened to leave if he didn't comply. He was painting her as manipulative and greedy when all she'd done was ask to be treated like a genuine partner. Living with Jenna became completely impossible when she kept lecturing Lauren about her behavior and suggesting she needed to seriously reflect on what she'd done wrong. According to Jenna, Lauren was being unrealistic and entitled. She kept comparing Owen to her own husband, saying she would never have asked for money like that from him. But Jenna's situation was completely different from Lauren's. Her husband had always been generous with money, always thinking about their future together. Owen had never been like that until he got this sudden windfall, and then he'd gotten weird and possessive about it. After enduring a few weeks of Jenna's constant lectures, Lauren had to find her own place to live. She could barely afford the tiny studio apartment she ended up in, and it was utterly depressing compared to Owen's nice place where she'd been spending most of her time for the past year. Lauren started checking Owen's social media obsessively, even though she'd blocked him on all of her own accounts. She'd look at his profiles from her work computer, trying to see what he was doing with his life. And what she saw made her absolutely furious with rage. Owen looked happy. Actually happy. He was posting pictures of expensive dinners at restaurants they'd never been able to afford together. Weekend trips to places Lauren had always wanted to visit. New clothes that actually fit him properly. He was living the life that could have been theirs, but he was doing it completely alone. At least Lauren thought he was alone, until she saw her. Some woman named Sarah started appearing in Owen's photos. At first, Lauren tried to convince herself that maybe Sarah was just a friend, just someone from work or something innocent. But then she saw pictures that made it crystal clear they were dating. Owen had moved on to someone new, and it had only been a few months since their breakup. Lauren couldn't wrap her head around the fact that Owen had found someone new so quickly. Someone who was probably perfectly happy to let him keep all his money to himself because she didn't understand what real partnership actually looked like. Someone who was probably just impressed by his newfound wealth and the lifestyle it could provide. From what Lauren could piece together from social media, Sarah worked in healthcare somewhere and seemed to make decent money on her own. She was probably one of those aggressively independent women who didn't need a man to take care of her financially, which explained why Owen was with her. She wasn't going to ask him for anything. She wasn't going to expect him to share his resources or build a future together. But what really got under Lauren's skin was how genuinely happy Owen looked in those pictures with Sarah. Happier than Lauren had ever seen him during their entire 2 years together. And that didn't make any logical sense because Lauren had been the one making him happy. She'd been the one supporting him emotionally and building him up when he was feeling down. Lauren started to wonder if Owen had been planning this all along. Maybe he'd been looking for an excuse to break up with her, and the lottery money had given him the perfect opportunity. Maybe he'd already been talking to Sarah before their breakup. Maybe this whole thing had been orchestrated from the beginning. The absolute worst part of everything was that Lauren couldn't get any real information about what was happening in Owen's life anymore. Most of their mutual friends weren't talking to her anymore, apparently because Owen had told them Lauren was stalking him and making him uncomfortable. Like she was some crazy ex-girlfriend instead of someone who'd been genuinely wronged and betrayed. Lauren tried to focus on rebuilding her own life, but it was incredibly hard when she kept seeing constant reminders of what she'd lost. Owen was living it up with his lottery money while she was struggling just to make rent on her tiny studio apartment. He was dating someone new and building a future while Lauren was too emotionally damaged to even think about dating anyone. Her work performance started seriously suffering because she was constantly distracted by everything that had happened. She was showing up late to her retail shifts, calling in sick when she just couldn't face dealing with customers, making careless mistakes that she never would have made before. Her manager, who was probably just jealous of Lauren's looks anyway, started writing her up for every tiny infraction. Eventually, Lauren got fired. They said it was for performance issues and repeated policy violations, but Lauren knew it was really because she was going through an incredibly rough time and needed support instead of criticism. She couldn't believe they'd actually fire someone for having personal problems and struggling mentally. Without her job, Lauren couldn't afford her studio apartment anymore. The rent was due and she had no way to pay it. She had to move back in with her parents, which was absolutely humiliating at her age. Here she was, 26 years old, sleeping in her childhood bedroom with her old posters still on the walls because her ex-boyfriend had been too selfish to help secure their future together. Lauren's parents kept asking her what had happened, why she couldn't just work things out with Owen like adults. They didn't understand that Lauren had done absolutely nothing wrong. She'd asked for what she deserved based on her contributions to the relationship, and Owen had shown his true selfish colors by refusing. The worst part was that Lauren couldn't escape hearing about Owen's continued success. She heard through the grapevine that he'd invested some of his lottery money in his friend Isaac's business, and they were both doing really well financially. Meanwhile, Lauren was filing for unemployment benefits and trying to figure out how to pay her car insurance. And then came the final devastating blow that nearly destroyed her completely. Lauren saw the engagement announcement on social media. Owen and Sarah looking blissfully happy together, with Sarah showing off a diamond ring that probably cost more than Lauren made in 6 months at her retail job. They'd been dating for less than a year, and Owen was already proposing marriage. Lauren couldn't believe what she was seeing. Owen had specifically told her he wasn't ready for marriage when she'd brought up the topic after 18 months of dating. He'd said he wanted to focus on building his career first, that he needed more financial stability before making that kind of commitment. But apparently all Owen had needed was some lottery money and a different girlfriend to suddenly become completely ready for marriage and lifelong commitment. The engagement announcement had hundreds of likes and supportive comments from people saying what a perfect couple Owen and Sarah were. Lauren wanted desperately to comment something about how quickly Owen had moved on, about his real character, but she knew it would just make her look bitter and jealous. Instead, she sat there staring at the pictures on her phone screen, realizing that Owen had bought that engagement ring with his lottery money. The same money that Lauren had asked him to share with her. The same money that he'd said he needed to invest carefully in his future. Well, apparently his future had included proposing to another woman just months after their breakup. Lauren could see exactly what was going to happen next, and it made her physically sick. Owen and Sarah would have a big, expensive wedding with all their friends and family celebrating. They'd buy a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. They'd take amazing honeymoons to exotic locations. They'd have kids who would grow up with every possible advantage in life. And Lauren would be watching from the sidelines, still trying desperately to rebuild her shattered life from nothing. But Lauren also knew deep in her heart that Owen and Sarah's happiness wouldn't last forever. Owen might seem like a different person now, but people don't really change at their core. Eventually, Sarah would see the selfish, calculating side of him that Lauren had seen. She'd see how quickly he could discard someone who'd been important to him. She'd learn the truth about who he really was. The problem was that Lauren was absolutely nowhere near ready to move on with her own life. She was living with her parents like a teenager. She was unemployed with no real prospects. She was struggling with depression and anxiety that made it hard to get out of bed some mornings. She wasn't exactly in a position to attract the kind of man who could give her the life she felt she deserved. So Lauren was stuck watching Owen live out the life that should have been hers while she tried to rebuild from absolutely nothing. Every single day was a painful reminder of what she'd lost, what she'd been denied, what she could have had if Owen had just been willing to share his good fortune with her. Lauren started having detailed fantasies about running into Owen somewhere and having the perfect comeback ready. She imagined him seeing her looking absolutely amazing with some successful new boyfriend, finally realizing what he'd lost. But the harsh reality was that she was nowhere near that point in her recovery. Sometimes Lauren wondered if she should have handled things differently with Owen. Maybe if she'd been more patient with him, if she'd approached the money conversation more gradually, Owen would have eventually come around to her way of thinking. But then she'd remember that she'd done absolutely nothing wrong. She'd asked her partner to consider her when making major financial decisions that would affect both their futures. That's not unreasonable. That's what partners do. And honestly, Lauren was glad she'd found out Owen's true colors before they'd gotten married or had children together. Better to learn that someone was selfish and unreliable after 2 years than after 10 years, and a mortgage and kids. But that knowledge didn't make it hurt any less. Lauren had invested 2 years of her life in someone who'd thrown it all away the second something better came along for him. She'd believed in a future that had apparently never really existed, at least not for Owen. 8 long months after everything fell apart, Lauren was still living with her parents and struggling to find any kind of work. Owen was probably planning his wedding to Sarah down to every last detail, living in their new house, enjoying all the benefits of his lottery win. The contrast between their situations was absolutely devastating. Lauren knew that someday karma would catch up with Owen. People like him always got what was coming to them eventually. Maybe Sarah would leave him for someone even richer, or maybe he'd blow through all his money on stupid investments and end up broke. Either way, he'd eventually realize what he'd lost when he chose money over Lauren. But for now, Lauren had to focus on just surviving each day. She had to find a way to rebuild her life from complete scratch while watching Owen live the life that should have been hers. And that was the hardest part of everything. Knowing she deserved so much better, but being completely powerless to change anything about her situation. Lauren's story is a stark reminder of how quickly entitlement and poor judgment can completely derail your entire life. She demanded 75% of money she had no legal or moral claim to. She issued ultimatums instead of celebrating her partner's good fortune. She burned bridges with family and friends who tried to give her honest feedback. And now she's paying the price for those decisions every single day. The universe does have a way of working things out, but maybe not in the way Lauren expects. Owen might be winning now in her eyes, but he's actually just living his life and making choices that are right for him. And when Lauren's luck changes, if it changes, it'll be because she finally learned to take responsibility for her own actions instead of blaming everyone else. Because at the end of the day, Lauren is still the same person she's always been. But whether she's actually strong and deserving like she believes, or whether she needs to do some serious self-reflection about her behavior, that's something only time will tell. And someday, maybe everyone will see the truth about this situation. Just maybe not the truth Lauren thinks they'll see. If this story shocked you as much as it shocked me, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Lauren had any right to ask for that money? Or did she completely sabotage her own life through entitlement and unrealistic expectations? Hit that like button if you want me to keep bringing you these incredible true stories. Share this video with your friends because trust me, they need to hear this one. And subscribe to Mrs. Emma so you never miss another story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about relationships, money, and human nature. Until next time, I'm Emma, reminding you that sometimes the worst betrayals are the ones we commit against ourselves.